Time for another shootout between the HOKA Cielo Road and the Brooks HYPERION. Both of these shoes are made to go fast. Let's see how they compare. Time for those disclosures. Guys, Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me the Brooks HYPERION for the purpose of review, and HOKA was good enough to send me the Cielo Road for the purpose of review. However, neither of them are going to get to see this video before you do, and neither have requested that I make a comparison video. With that said, let's get started with price. The Brooks HYPERION will cost you $140. The HOKA Cielo Road will cost you $160. So right off the bat, the Brooks is considerably cheaper, $20 cheaper than the Cielo Road. But hold on, there's a few things you're getting or not getting with the Cielo Road. As far as stack height goes, Brooks is pretty low key about their stack heights. I'm estimating we have about 31 in the heel, 23 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. The HOKA Cielo Road has 31 in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for a 3mm drop. So we've got 8mm drop, 3mm drop. And I think that drop right there is the biggest difference. And I should tell you that the Brooks HYPERION is Brooks's lightest training shoe, whereas the HOKA Cielo Road is a race day shoe. The HOKA Cielo Road is made for those 5K, 10K efforts. So it's made to move fast. And the Brooks HYPERION is also made to move fast. It's just not considered a race day shoe. But still, I think they're comparable enough where it's worth discussing the similarities and the differences. Brooks claims that in a US men's size 9, the HYPERION tips the scale at 7.6 ounces or 215.5 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, the Brooks HYPERION tips the scale at 9.1 ounces or 259 grams. HOKA claims that in a US men's size 9, the Cielo Road tips the scale at 7.5 ounces or 213 grams. That's only 2.5 grams less than the HYPERION. However, in my size, the difference becomes a little more pronounced. In my size, a US men's size 13, the Cielo Road tips the scale at 8.6 ounces or 245 grams. That's 14 grams less than the HYPERION. So if you also wear a US men's size 13 and you were doing a cost-benefit analysis, the $20 premium on the Cielo Road works out to $1.40 per gram that you're not getting. It was probably a smoother way to say that, but it doesn't matter. The Cielo Road is more expensive and yet lighter. But still, when it comes down to it, 14 grams really isn't that much. And although I can feel the difference when both of them are in my hand, the Brooks HYPERION still feels very light. Both shoes are made for neutral runners, and there are really no stability elements to speak of. Both shoes also run true to size. However, I'm wearing a US men's size 13 in the Brooks HYPERION, and I wear US men's size 13 across the board with Brooks. I am wearing a US men's size 13 in the HOKA Cielo Road. However, for most other non-race day shoes from HOKA, I do wear a size 12.5. So because this is a little more of a race day fit, I do find I have to size up with HOKA. Okay, let's talk about materials. And I think this pretty much describes what the shoe, this heel collar. You see the amount of padding? To me, this kind of indicates more of a training shoe rather than a race shoe. And you'll see what I mean when we compare it to the Cielo Road. We have plenty of padding here around the heel collar. It's very comfortable. There's a lovely step-in feel. Relatively speaking, relative to the Cielo Road, this is a very traditional trainer. The heel counter is extremely rigid. Again, once my foot is seated in the HYPERION, it just feels good, feels ready to go. Brooks is using a new warp knit upper on the HYPERION, and I've said it in some other videos that this shoe looks a lot heavier than it really is, but I think that comes down to the color. Darker shoes look heavier, right? But this new warp knit upper is extremely breathable, and it's considerably lighter than it looks. Brooks is using a very thin race day tongue. The tongue is gusseted on the medial side, and there is a lace loop, so there's no chance of that tongue slipping around while you're running. I found the laces to be just about perfect. When I tied them, I got a nice lockdown, and there is plenty of laces to work with. In fact, probably the right amount of lace. Not too long, not too short. The HYPERION is using very minimal overlays. We just got a little bit of branding, got some reinforcement along the eyelet chain, and then there's some underlays around the toe box just to keep that off your foot. When we come down to the outsole, Brooks is using their DNA Flash. That's a nitrogen-infused midsole. And I gotta say, this is a pretty good midsole. This is what Brooks is using in their race shoes. And it's fun, it's firm, and it's responsive. I know I said it's firm. It's not too firm. I know firm has negative connotations. I should say it's more responsive than firm, but you do need some firmness in order to get that responsiveness. And this toes that line nicely. There is no plate in the HYPERION. It is just one slab of DNA Flash. And then we come down to the outsole, we can see we've got plenty of outsole rubber, which means this shoe is going to last, it's going to be durable. And Brooks claims that this outsole rubber is strategically placed to conserve weight and promote fast transitions. And yeah, it works. Can't say anything negative about the placement of the rubber. This shoe does have fast transitions and it does feel fast. Okay, remember that heel collar? The heel collar on the Cielo Road is the exact opposite of the heel collar on the HYPERION. There is barely anything there. It is super thin. There are bolsters on the medial and the lateral side just to grip the sides of your ankle when it goes in. And clearly HOKA is on a weight-saving mission with the Cielo Road, as they should be. It's a race shoe. The heel counter is non-existent. Look at that. I can squeeze, I can push, and if I hold it up and you look right on the back, there is actually no padding right on the back of your heel. So the only pressure that you've got around your heel is on the sides. Kind of holding the sides like that. The upper is a lightweight mesh. HOKA is using 100% recycled polyester in their mesh, and underlaying the mesh is an internal chassis system. And now that chassis system is just to give the upper a little support. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera. I can't because I'm colorblind, but if you see colors, you're going to see it just fine. You can see the chassis here, and then it attaches to the lace loop and comes down to the midsole just so you get a little support. As far as the overlays, we've got the branding on both sides and then just a little support along the eyelet chain. The tongue on the Cielo Road, guys, it's even thinner than on the Hyperion. It is absolutely race day ready. The tongue is highly ventilated. It is not gusseted, but there is a lace loop. I did have a little bit of trouble with the tongue because it's so thin. When I put my foot in, I did find the edges of the tongue kind of wrap around, and it's actually fairly reminiscent of the Hyperion Max. Not this shoe, but the Hyperion Max didn't have a gusseted tongue, and I found I had to reseat the tongue once I put my foot in. The Hyperion right here does have that gusset on the medial side, so that kind of takes care of that problem. But yeah, the Cielo Road, super minimal tongue. It just requires a little more attention, a little more intention when you're seating your foot in the shoe. Now here's the thing. When I initially put my foot into the Cielo Road, I immediately experienced heel slip, and that was when I was just walking around. And that is going to be because of the minimal heel collar, the minimal padding, and this lack of a heel counter right here. However, once I did the lace lock method, I was able to lock down my heel good enough to go for a run and actually wear this shoe at speeds that it was intended. I did not have heel slip once I did the lace lock method in the Cielo Road. However, with that said, I did experience a little feeling of looseness. Now, I was very conscious of it, at least in the beginning when I was testing it, because I was wondering, was it actually slipping? And no, it wasn't. It was just a little looser than I remembered in my heel. But other than that, the Cielo Road gave me a good lockdown across the midfoot and feels extremely good on my foot. If we come down to the midsole, HOKA is using a full-length PEBA midsole. Now, there's no plate in this shoe. It is just one chunk of PEBA foam. And guys, it feels like it. It feels like that distinctive pop that you get from running in a PEBA midsole foamed shoe. It's quite lovely. And I am really glad to see HOKA incorporating this PEBA foam in more of their shoes. When we come down to the outsole, I think this is very surprising. This amount of outsole rubber on what ultimately amounts to a racing flat is very surprising. Very surprising, and yet definitely agreeable, because it means that this shoe is going to last you longer than your average race shoe. You know what I mean? At least I hope it will. Now, both the Cielo Road and the Brooks Hyperion have excellent grip. I have run in the wet in both of these shoes, and I also took the Brooks Hyperion to the beach and I ran in the water and really got my feet wet, got them soaked. And after that little experiment, I'm happy to say that the Brooks Hyperion continued to hold well on my foot. I was a little worried that the warp knit mesh upper might get a little loose around my foot, but it didn't. Not at all. Now this lightweight mesh upper on the Cielo Road, I'm guessing that would also hold me pretty well. That mesh is very airy, certainly a lot airier than the Brooks Hyperion, and I bet this would shed water like a champ. As far as breathability goes, look, I would never say that the Brooks Hyperion is not a breathable shoe. It is extremely breathable. However, when you put it up against the Cielo Road and you see that wide mesh, clearly, if you have an open window, which is pretty much what the Cielo Road amounts to, it's going to be a lot airier than when you have a screen in the window. But you're still getting plenty of ventilation when there's a screen in. As far as ride goes, both shoes performed exactly how I expected. They are both very fast. Now, I've worn each of these shoes for several workouts and several runs where I've just gone out to run in them to get some volume, because I always like to get enough volume in them where I'm not running at threshold or tempo or interval pace, just to see how they feel across the board. I'm happy to report that both shoes feel really good when I'm running easy, which is a little surprising, but still, it's a good report. Both shoes pick up the pace lovely, they feel light on your feet, and they really disappear when you pick up the pace. Now look, this isn't based on any kind of scientific analysis, but I do think that the HOKA Cielo Road feels faster than the Brooks Hyperion, and that could be down to a number of things. The one thing I don't think it comes down to is the weight. Both of these shoes feel equally light when they're on my foot, and that 14-gram difference in my size isn't noticeable to me. I think the primary difference is that this is using PEBA foam, and that just seems to pop a little better. Now, remember, that's just my opinion. There are going to be a boatload of people that do prefer the Hyperion and how it feels underfoot, and really the difference isn't that big. I would still be using the Brooks Hyperion for my faster workouts. So if you are wondering which one to buy, let me break it down this way. Well, first of all, if you're a Brooks fan, I think the Brooks Hyperion is a fantastic shoe, and you don't have to worry about jumping brands and go into the Cielo Road. Same thing if you're a HOKA fan. I think this shoe is going to fit into your rotation nicely, especially because HOKA has rounded out a nice rotation of shoes with the Mark X, the Cielo Road, and the Rocket X2. But if you're going to pick one of these shoes today, I think you have to ask yourself what you plan to be using these for the most. Look, if money's no object and you have a stable full of shoes and you're looking for a shoe to run 5K and 10K, look, the Cielo Road, it's a no-brainer. It just feels a little faster. However, I think maybe if you are a more normal runner and you don't have a stable full of shoes and you're a little more cost conscious, I think the Brooks Hyperion is the much better deal. You're going to be able to take this shoe, you're going to be able to wear it for a lot more runs than you would the Cielo Road. Also, it's going to be a lot more comfortable just because this is a training shoe. It's a lot easier to put on. My foot just slides into the Hyperion Tempo, whereas I kind of have to wrestle with the Cielo Road to get it on my foot. The Brooks Hyperion is also $20 cheaper. So in a nutshell, if you race 5Ks every weekend, then get the Cielo Road. If you don't, if you are mainly training, if you're running for fitness, you're trying to get better, you're trying to get faster, you're going to do the occasional 5K, 10K, I'm gonna say go with the Brooks Hyperion. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been a shootout between the HOKA CIELO Road and the Brooks Hyperion. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.